Hey, Captain Chris Myers here, Central Florida Sight Fishing Charters. And when we're fishing on the flats, a lot of the stuff we're using is soft plastic baits. Most of the time we get to cast two fish that you see, but sometimes, depending on the conditions or what we're targeting, we may be doing blind casting as well. But in either event, we're using soft plastic baits, and something we use a lot here in the flats is a soft plastic jerkbait. This one happens to be a 5.5 inch DOA cal bait, and inside it, in the back here, you see I have a Woody's rattle inserted into the bait. Give it a little noise and extra attraction for those fish. I'm using all 10-pound braided line, and a lot of times people have difficulty if they haven't used braid before because they're not familiar with how the braid works, and they get often wrapped around the tip. They're getting knots in the braid from reeling up slack. And I'm going to show you a couple things here how we operate that bait so that it'll work better for you and you'll be prepared when you get here. We always want to maintain a perfectly tight line when we're retrieving these baits for two reasons. One, you don't want to get slack on the spool because that's going to cause you those big knots that some people get. And two, you don't want this line, which is real fine and limp, it's like thread almost, to wrap around the tip. If your line to your lure is always tight, you're not going to get those knots, it's not going to wrap your tip, and you're going to feel the bite and be able to set that hook right away. So when we cast, I'm going to show you the retrieve that works best for me. If I make my cast, I'm always going to use two hands, I'm always going to cast in a straight line. That way I can start moving that bait right away. As soon as it hits, if I have to lift this rod tip up to get my line tight, that's what I do. I always want to begin my retrieve with a tight line. I flip the bail closed by hand. Now when I'm retrieving, I'm just going to twitch it a couple of inches. Pop, pop, reel, reel. Twitch, twitch, reel, reel. You'll see that the line is always tight here. What I want to avoid is popping it and doing this. If I pop it and throw my rod tip back forward, that's how it's going to jump around my tip, and now I'm not reeling up I'm reeling up slack, I'm not reeling up a tight line. If I get a bite right now, I can't set the hook. But the biggest problem that's going to occur is the next cast, when I may be casting to a beautiful big school of redfish, a huge knot might come off my reel because I was reeling up slack the cast before. So I always want to maintain tension to that tip. And all I want this lure, or most of the other lures that we're used to do, is hop up a little, dive back down, hop up a little. I don't want it to be moving that far. I don't want my lure to move 5 feet, 6 feet per twitch. So when I twitch this thing, I don't pull it way back here. I just move that rod tip 6 feet, I move my bait 6 feet. And now my bait's not even near the fish anymore. So whether I'm throwing to a fish or I'm blind casting, when I make my cast, it's just little pops. Pop, pop, reel, reel, pop, pop, reel, reel, pop, pop, reel, reel, pop, pop. Just little twitches my wrist. My wrist is just barely, all it takes to move that rod. If you look at my wrist, it's just barely, barely moving. It's very, very subtle. This is finesse fishing. As soon as it hits, my line is instantly tight. I pop it a couple times and I reel back down. So here you see the same cast from another angle. So I make my cast, instantly that line is tight. And when I'm twitching this thing, a key that I want to remember is keeping most of my line out of the water. If I lay my line down like this, when we're only in a foot of water, every fish between me and that lure I've now hit with my line. Especially when we're throwing across schools of fish, which we're frequently doing. If I throw across that school, what I want to do is keep the line and just get the lure up to them, drop the lure in there, and then just barely twitch it. Very key that I'm just barely twitching that thing along. But you'll notice that I don't have my line in the water. Now I find for me, as a right-handed caster, it's easier for me to do this off the right-hand side of my body rather than twitch it back this way, because the wrist is stronger pulling this way than it is pulling back this direction. It'll make your hand a lot less tired. You could, if you'd like, come around and twitch it on this side. Just for me, personally, I'd rather twitch it on the other side. That's what works better for me. Find what works best for you, but add little twitches, keep that line tight, and you won't have any problems up at your tip or down at your reel, and you'll be catching more fish.